Hi, my name is Brina, and I play video games for fun.
Welcome to my channel. If you know anything about me or anything about Dead by Daylight, you might be wondering how someone like me who doesn't particularly like or play competitive games and isn't a huge fan of horror media got involved with a game like this one. Well, warm yourself by the fire, get your hooks ready, and take my hand as we wander off into the fog together. So, I recently started playing a new game, and I am kind of obsessed with it. My older sibling introduced me to Dead by Daylight, and I'm so glad it did. My older sibling is a creature, and I will thus be referring to it with its chosen form of address. It is also my very best gaming buddy, and has introduced me to many of my favorites over the years. The most recent one of these is, of course, the asymmetric multiplayer horror game Dead by Daylight. First, let's talk a little about the game mechanics. For those who don't know, an asymmetric multiplayer game is typically a game where one more powerful character plays against a group of less powerful characters. They compete to try and complete the game's objectives. In the case of Dead by Daylight, the more powerful player plays a killer, like the ones in slasher movies and horror media, and the less powerful players play a group of 4 survivors, like the characters trying to survive and escape in slasher movies and horror media. The game builds on the tropes and stories of that media to create a compelling type of gameplay that isn't like any other genre. The basic character set of the game starts with several survivors and killers that are free to play once you own the base game. Each killer or survivor comes with a set of 3 perks, or abilities, with space to add a 4th once the spaces are opened. These can eventually be used on other characters within the same category, meaning killer perks can be unlocked for other killers and survivor perks can be unlocked for other survivors. Each killer also has a unique set of abilities, referred to in the game's terms as their killer power or their power for short. You can eventually unlock many different survivors and killers, some original and some licensed from different movies, games, etc., whose perks can be combined in lots of different ways to customize your characters and your gameplay experience. There are also further ways to customize your experience. In the case of survivors, by bringing an item and some add-ons, and in the case of killers, by using add-ons with your basic killer power. Both character types can further affect match outcomes or gameplay by bringing an offering for the creature that governs the game's world. You find all these things, along with perks and level ups for your existing perks, in the game's unique leveling system, called the Blood Web. The basic story of the game goes like this. The world in which Dead by Daylight takes place is a magical realm controlled by a great, big, really powerful sort of monster creature thing called the Entity. The Entity's motivations are strange and somewhat incomprehensible, but from what we do know about it, it probably feeds on suffering. For the purposes of gameplay, it wants to feed by forcing killers and survivors to pit themselves against each other in a series of contests which the game refers to as trials. In basic gameplay, the survivors' goals are to repair into functionality a series of 5 generators that power an endgate, which then opens and lets them escape. The killer's basic goal is to stop them by catching them and putting them on hooks, which eventually leads to them being killed. But don't worry, there is no permanent death in the Entity's realm, and they'll be back again for the next trial. The Entity sits in a web of bashed together bits of different universes, all connected through the fog which it sort of controls and sort of occupies. It uses its fog to envelop and collect survivors and killers from many different worlds and times in history, and it keeps them in their own realms in the case of killers and together in a small realm in the case of survivors until it's ready to have them perform for it. These places are sort of real and sort of magical constructs created by the Entity from the characters' memories, which allows for some very cool design choices. In our reality, the company that makes Dead by Daylight, Behavior, has licensed characters from several other games and film franchises to add to its originals. In terms of gameplay, this means there are some really interesting, strange, and fun combinations. You could have a xenomorph facing off against a paramedic, a musician, and part of the cast of Stranger Things, or a teleporting swamp witch attempting to hunt down a Dungeons and Dragons bard, a futuristic space dweller, a modern-day botanist, and Jill Valentine from the Resident Evil franchise. It's so much fun. The main Dead by Daylight story takes place in a specific set of realms with specific rules, but it's clear there are other realms too. Information about this is found in the lore included in the game's tomes and storytelling bits, available in a separate area for those who like that sort of thing, so it doesn't interfere with the excitement or timing of a match. The entity and its realms are vast, and we see into only one part of them in the game's regular story. This provides a lore and story reason for the different gameplay modes and events we periodically get, which keep the game fun, interesting, and varied. It also opens up vast possibilities for fan works exploring realms where maybe the rules are a little different. While the characters come from many different places and backgrounds, there are certain common elements that start to emerge in their stories. Survivors are characterized by their tenacity, their toughness, their clever problem-solving, by refusing to give up no matter what. Killers are defined by looking for a sense of belonging, by searching for ways to cope with loss, or by needing to escape trauma however they can, even if that means repeating it on those they meet. Both groups of characters are strongly motivated by their goals, whether those are connection, success, knowledge, or fame. Beings from both groups seem to always be chasing something. Often in the entity's realms, that thing is each other. One of the most important themes of the game, and one I think will always be relevant, is stories about finding hope and the power to endure under the most difficult circumstances, and doing whatever you can to hold on to it once you have it. In a more strictly mechanical sense, the trials take place across a series of levels with strict boundaries the players have to stay inside of, referred to in the game's terms as its maps. The maps coordinate with the characters, so many characters have a map that represents part of their own story or background, though this is more strictly true for the killers than the survivors. In the game's story, the entity has constructed the maps from the characters' minds and memories, and maybe also from bits of lost and destroyed universes it has collected. Because it doesn't necessarily fully understand other creatures, or maybe because those minds and memories can be unreliable, the environments are all also a bit weird. Now, if the game's mechanics sound somewhat familiar to you, but you can't quite put your finger on it, it's because what the game boils down to is essentially a big game of freeze tag where the killer is it. While it certainly can get a bit complicated, it can also be so much fun. One thing that's unique about Dead by Daylight is that with the ways different character abilities, strategies, approaches, maps, and powers can all come together, you get nearly limitless possible experiences. There's also a lot of information involved in learning and then really understanding the nuances of the killer powers, survivor abilities, and map layouts that means even though I've been playing the game for almost 6 months now, there are still a lot of things in it that are brand new to me. And when I find myself stuck or frustrated, there's a lively community of players and content creators I can go to for new information, tips, tricks, and strategies that make it seem to unfold all over again. There's so much depth to learning the strategies for the different characters, I feel like I'll never run out of new things to discover, but the basics of making a functional build and the randomness of the way a match comes together also means it's possible to have some degree of success without a lot of study. The community of players you find in Dead by Daylight is also so intriguing. There's a limited in-game chat before and after matches and very few emotes, so communication can be difficult, but people find creative ways to get their points across in-game. Sometimes a match is deadly serious, but sometimes there's also room for fun and whimsy, and that's lovely, and I love that about it. Even on days when it's frustrating, it's always interesting. And there's a whole community outside of gameplay there to evaluate and experiment and talk about the game too. I find myself picking up terminology in my thought habits, so on a day I have a lot to get done, I'm mentally reminding myself to press W, the keyboard key to go forward. I've started to also make little things I need to get done more exciting by adding tech, or invocation, or hex to the description of how I do them, like people do describing their in-game techniques. I'm not grouchy from being too tired and hungry, I'm just using my 10-minute power nap invocation, or my snack tech to get an energy boost just when I need it. I'm not taking a step back from something difficult. I'm moonwalking to sneak up on the problem from a different angle. I'm not struggling with productivity. I'm perfecting my timing. So after my sibling introduced me, I found myself developing a really strong attachment to this sometimes quirky, sometimes difficult game. Thanks for joining me on my journey into the fog, and when we meet again, I hope it's in a good realm. In the meantime, I wish wherever you find yourself, you'll also find the hope, community, and ability you need to keep going forward, and I hope you always find yourself chasing something worthwhile.